All right, look, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I really hate to be negative about movies. For the most part, I try to find positive things to say about films and try to find the audience for whom a film really works. A thing that I also don't enjoy is Paradise Hills, a god-awful movie.
I don't know what to say.
Now up front, I'm going to try not to be hyperbolically negative or completely hate on this film, but I think I say that every time I see a movie I don't like, and it only lasts for so long. Up front, we saw the trailer for Paradise Hills early on in the Loft Film Fest, and it was very exciting. In fact, it reminded me of a movie from last year's Film Fest, which was The Wild Boys. So today we're going to talk about The Wild Boys. It had an equally interesting aesthetic in its trailer. Visually, it seemed very unique, and it seemed like it was going to try to do a lot of unique and interesting things. The trailer itself also does what I love. It told me just enough and showed me just enough to get me intrigued about the film without giving too much of the plot away, which is probably easy to do since there's not much plot to speak of. Now, unlike The Wild Boys, which actually did a lot of things from a content and narrative and characterization standpoint that made it resonant and unique, Paradise Hills kind of fails on all of those levels. The aesthetic, like the trailer promises, is beautiful. The costumes are fantastic, the color is fantastic, the lighting is fantastic. As far as visual cinema goes, sure, there's a lot there to be positive about, but that's really where the compliments end. Now, what is Paradise Hills? Well, Paradise Hills is a story about a group of women who are sort of taken away from their homes, usually sent off by a father figure or patriarch of some sort, whether it's a husband or whatever, and sent off to this retreat where they are ostensibly trained to be refined, to become ladies who might be better suitors for men. And well, if you think it sounds a little bit like the Stepford Wives, that's exactly what this movie is, 100%. It is the exact same movie, except in this film, Mia Jovovich is Poison Ivy. Now, I know I just threw a lot at you right there, so let's take a quick step back. Performances, gee, are there any good performances? Well, up until the point where Mia Jovovich turns into Poison Ivy, she's actually fantastic. She's had a long and storied career, and I think she's sort of an underrated actress. A lot of people, maybe younger than myself, only know her from like Resident Evil type movies, maybe The Fifth Element. But even dating back to Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr., she's put in some great performances, and it's nice to see her in a role that allows her to have a more dynamic personality. At times in this film, she can be malevolent, she can be sinister. She has a nice variety to her, and she has a nice, not just look, but I think her way of delivering dialogue, the way she affects her speech, was very convincing and very interesting. And it was a real disappointment that this film had sort of a ham-fisted action sci-fi kind of finale that ruined all of that and made her character, to me, sort of a comic punching bag. Now, as far as other performances, Awkwafina has had a great year. I enjoyed her in Paradise Hills just as much as she's getting rave reviews for her performance in The Farewell. And I'm really interested to see where her career goes from this point. Everyone else is pretty forgettable, if you're lucky. So why am I being so negative? I've already said that it's beautiful, and the aesthetic is, in some ways, it's unique. I don't think it's the first time that a movie has looked like this, but it definitely had its own style, and maybe in some cases that can make up for a lack of substance. Sure, I can understand that argument completely, and I've also talked with all of you before about how you don't need to be completely original to tell a good story. It's where you take a concept that maybe has been done several times over that really speaks to how creative and innovative and resonant a story can be. This film takes the Stepford Wives idea absolutely nowhere. It sort of is to the Stepford Wives what the Michael Bay film, I think it was The Island, was to Logan's Run. It's just the same thing on steroids. It's a sci-fi, it's got action elements, there's layers of intrigue that, once you understand where the plot's going, are really just obvious and therefore tedious in their unfolding throughout the film's runtime. One more caveat I'll give, as I'm trying my best to be polite about this film, is that it is similar to The House of Sweat and Tears from last year's Loft Film Fest, a movie that came on at like the 10 p.m. slot, so you've seen a lot of films that day. It's starting kind of late. That doesn't really help, and it is for sure the only feature film that we sat through where I struggled to stay awake. Part of me wanted to say that that was something that I would give back to the movie, like maybe I was in the wrong headspace, but thinking more about it, I know the difference between I'm tired and I can't stay awake through this, and oh my god, this movie is so boring, I would rather stare at the back of my eyelids, and this was the latter. But if my goal here were just to tell you whether I liked it or disliked it, I mean, I could do that in 5 seconds. I want to see if there's an audience that might enjoy this picture, and I think that there is, probably best signified by the people sitting behind us who wouldn't shut up for 2 hours during it. And I think that's people who are looking for a film that speaks to feminist ideas, and the best way I can describe it is sort of like philosophy 101 kind of approaches to feminist issues. If you are of an older age, or you've seen movies like The Stepford Wives, you've seen this argument play out, you know this thought experiment, and you know what the film's trying to say. I don't think it delivers much new, but if you are a younger film goer and you want a film that is a predominantly female cast, that is telling a uniquely feminine story, this might be for you, particularly if you're looking for something that's more action intensive as opposed to contemplative, like some art films that people could write off as being pretentious. But that's kind of my complaint. I can agree with the sentiment of a piece of art. I can agree with what you're trying to say, but still be disappointed or feel betrayed by a lack of innovation or creativity in the storytelling that shows a respect for the audience. The trailer was hyping up, a visionary director making her debut, which, how do you know if she's visionary, if she's making her debut? It talks a lot about how the movie is so transcendently unique and beautiful, but from a style perspective, sure, but from a substance perspective, you can't help but just feel taken advantage of. I don't think that I learned anything new. I don't think that I had any real thoughts that lingered with me afterward. And, what I love about cinema is the ability to talk with people afterward about what we thought. And it was a 3-minute conversation. Boy, that was awful. Yeah, it kind of was. I mean, it was pretty. Oh, it was certainly pretty. It was The Stepford Wives, though. Oh my God, now that you said it, that's exactly what it was. And then we were kind of done. We kind of fizzled out on that one. When we talk about bad movies that are so bad they're enjoyable, I think it's because there's a certain sincerity in bad movies like The Room or Plan 9 from Outer Space, where, yeah, it's funny that it's so bad despite your best efforts. This is the kind of movie where, like Twilight, to me at least, it was so bad, even making fun of it, I don't think could salvage the viewing experience. So in conclusion, you know what I think about it. I wouldn't recommend it to almost anybody that I know. Maybe for a younger audience, it has an appeal, like I spoke to, where it is satisfactory if you're looking for a feminist approach to storytelling that tells a story of female empowerment and rebellion against social norms. I would credit that if it were in any way unique or a new way of telling that story, but it just wasn't. So if you fit into that niche and you're curious, add that to a list of films that you should see to buff up on that intro-level discussion of femininity and gender roles in cinema. But it should absolutely not be something you go out of your way to see, and it should certainly not be considered anything more than that kind of freshman approach to those topics. And I'm sorry that I spoiled Mia Jovovich turning into Poison Ivy, but I feel like it's the best way to describe how awful this movie is. She has the branches that come out and everything. Come on. You ripped off the worst Batman.